It's Wednesday, September 27th. Welcome back, everybody. John Aravosis here with today's Aravosis Report update on the war in Ukraine. As always, I'm shutting things on my computer as I talk to you. As always, I'm going to get TikTok rolling on my iPad. That looks good. And then introduce yourselves, say where you are from, and we will wait a minute or two for people to arrive. Here we go, TikTok. Boom. There we go. Come on. There we go. All right. Hey, Evie. Oh, hey guys, how are we today? Another gorgeous day in Washington, D.C. Very happy. It's been absolutely, we're getting like beautiful sort of end of summer weather finally, from beastly hot to nice, which is good. So, hey, Ash. So yeah, how are folks doing today? So I'm just going through the news here. Yep. Got a decent number of stories today. So, okay news, nothing bad. So, anyway, hey, Shane. Boys. So what's going on, guys? As always, let's wait a minute for folks to arrive, but we'll get started in a minute here. Just do our hellos. Thank you, John S., for the gift there. And who's that? Shane? Yep, Shane as well. And Elizabeth. Sorry, I kind of missed you guys. Hey, Martin in the UK. And Sydney. Excellent. Gothenburg, which I've been to. Boppo. Good to see you. Velika. Привет. Anyway, yeah, things are going okay here. Hey, Life, thank you for that. Like I said, it was a nice day today, so just kind of busy. Hola de Londres, hola de Washington, Londres. ¿Qué tal? Scotland, another Scot. Oh, Jordy's from Scotland. Okay. I did not remember that. I guess I should have remembered that. Hey, Charles and Ali, thank you. And Life, thank you for the gifts. Hello, Kansas. Yeah, exactly. If you're ever having issues on YouTube with the quality, always try to do a exit and come back in, or refresh the page, and sometimes it'll be better, or Twitch as well. Привет, Marie. How are you? Jeddah Mom, thanks for the Crazy American. Thank you guys for the gifts. Velika means big in Ukrainian. Oh, Velika? Oh, that's funny. Velika. Big. So big. Shishka Vredi. Brady. Shishka Brady. Velika Shishka Brady. Brady sounds like Brady, I'm guessing. Your name. Shishka? I don't know what Shishka is. What is Shishka? Thank you for the gift there, Konkarangan. Right? But what's Shishka then? John in Quebec City. Hello. Sausage? Oh, big Brady sausage? I'm sure it sounds better in Ukrainian. Anyway, hey guys. How are we doing today? I guess I'll get rolling. So welcome everybody. John Aravosis here. This is my nightly show. We do Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., and we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. Thank you, Ellie and Josh and Ellie again. Thank you guys for the gifts on TikTok. The way the show works, I will go through the stories that I think are relevant and interesting for the day, that hopefully give you some sense of what's going on with the war. And then for the second half of the show, I take your guys' questions. The way we do this, thank you, Ellie. Oh, thank you, Josh, for the rose, and Elizabeth, and Joe for the hat. The way we do it with questions is, as I said, second half of the show, you guys can submit questions here and there and everywhere else. The other way we do it is to, if you want to support my work and get your question in early, you can buy a super chat question on TikTok, and not TikTok. I'm sorry. I've only been doing this for a year and a half, and I still screw up. It's the funniest thing. You can buy a super chat question on YouTube, and as a thank you, I will answer the question immediately as soon as I'm done with my train of thought. Thank you, Adventures, Aflac. And otherwise, I'll answer questions anyway the second half. But as a thank you, I'll always get to it immediately, and also guarantee that a super chat question I will, of course, answer. TikTok, your guys' gifts very important as well to keep me going here. Thank you, Master Blaster. So I will always, when I see the gifts pop up on TikTok like that, the big gifts, I'll always do a shout out when I see them. But I usually do see them, so thank you. Please do keep the gifts coming. This is my full-time job, and I'm able to afford to do this because of your guys' gifts. So please do keep them coming. All right, let's get rolling, guys. So today is day 580 of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation in Ukraine. Sort of a breaking story from the Wall Street Journal that Germany is holding off on providing Taurus missiles to Ukraine. Thank you, Big John. The Taurus missiles are, thank you, Ellen, are not unlike the cruise missiles that the Ukrainians got already from the British and the French. The French missiles are called Scalp. The British ones are called Storm Shadow. They go sort of similar distance, 310 miles, 500, actually maybe even a little longer, 310 miles, 500 kilometers, great precision, fortified. They're great at going after underground bunkers, bridges, sinking large warships, etc. And the Ukrainians have wanted to get these missiles as part of their repertoire. And the issue has been that, well, there's a lot of issues here. It's clear the Germans have been dragging their feet. It honestly feels a lot like Joe Biden. It feels like a lot of the dragging the feet that the Americans keep doing on this. And here's what the Wall Street Journal was saying. I'll just read you a couple paragraphs. Germany is holding off sending Taurus long-range precision missiles to Ukraine because of concerns they would require German technicians to operate on the ground, which some officials fear could drag Berlin closer to a direct confrontation with Russia. I'm going to read more in a little second here, but I read this and I've got to say my BS meter went off. Thank you, Pedro, for the gift. My BS meter went off. I asked Callum, who's former British military, deals with a lot of weapon stuff, munitions, etc. And Callum's BS meter went off. I suppose it's possible that the German cruise missiles, for some reason, require German crews, whereas the French cruise missiles, the Ukrainians were able to figure out, and the British cruise missiles, the Ukrainians were able to figure out. And mind you, F-16s, the Ukrainians are figuring out, right? Thank you, Adam. I mean, we're training the Ukrainians how to operate and repair F-16s, but a German cruise missile is a step too far. Right? I should say a bridge too far, not to make a pun here, right? I think this is BS. What is also interesting is, where was this? Yes. The Germans have also given two other reasons for why they don't want to give the missiles to Ukraine. First, they were afraid the Ukrainians would attack Russian territory. Remember, that was the same BS that the Biden administration was giving on their weapons. And they're worried that the Ukrainians would attack the Kerch Bridge. Now, that's an interesting little point here, because why shouldn't the Ukrainians be able to attack the Kerch Bridge? The Kerch Bridge is an illegal bridge that Russia put up in order to cement its hold on Crimea, the territory the Russians stole from Ukraine in 2014. And it is a bridge that is being used to get a huge amount of supplies, logistics, fuel, weapons, food, troops themselves, equipment to the Russian occupation in Crimea, Kherson, Zaporizhia, all around here. So why shouldn't the Ukrainians go after a bridge that is the key to supplying Russian troops, right? I mean, what a just incredibly, but here's the other thing. I mean, it's incredibly stupid, but the other thing here is, remember I told you guys that, and I think this is a good lesson in life, when somebody keeps coming up with different excuses and another new excuse for why they're not going to do something, they're usually lying. They usually don't plan on doing it, period. They're never going to do it. And they usually have some other reason that they don't want to tell you. And instead of it, they come up with a reason. And then you kind of get around that, like this one, right? Oh, they're going to attack Russian territory. Well, guess what? That was the same concern the Biden administration had, others had, and the Ukrainians said, we won't do it. And they have not used Western weapons to attack Russian territory. So that excuse went out the window. Well, now they're saying, oh, but they might attack the Kerch Bridge. Well, the Brits then, according to the Wall Street Journal article, the Brits told the Germans and said, well, no, actually, our deal with the Ukrainians is they can't use our missiles unless they check with us. We have to not really approve of every target, but we get to veto a target. Right? In other words, they won't go after anything that's too Russian. They won't use our missiles to attack inside Russia, for example. And they told the Germans, it's been working great with us. You can do the same things. The Germans went, oh, no. And now they're saying, oh, their engineers will have to be on the ground helping the poor, lowly little Ukrainians who could never figure out how to use a missile. I mean, give me a break. As I said, the Ukrainians are learning how to fly F-16s and how to repair F-16s, and they can't learn how to fly a German missile? Give me a break. It just annoys me because it's the ongoing BS. It's like I said, it's the same BS that we're seeing with regards to a lot of the American weapons, where it gets dragged out, and I don't know. I'm adjusting my temperature as always because my room gets too cold. Somebody who understands German politics better than me, because I know American politics. I don't claim to know German politics, but my God, it's just, anyway, Wagner update. So there's an update today about the Wagner Group. The Wagner guys are the mercenaries, the Russian mercenaries, soldiers for hire, and they basically, it's a private military army. Russia now has a few of them, and but still kind of run by the government. I mean, it's a private company. It was run by Yevgeny Prigozhin, who's the guy that was Putin's friend, then tried to overthrow the government. Then Putin blew up his plane, about 2 months ago, or a month ago, whenever it was. It is a private army, but because it's Russia and Russia's kind of a dictatorship, nothing's really private, right? Putin's got his hands in everything. But they were being used to A, fight in Ukraine, and that was obviously on behalf of Russia itself. B, they're also using them around the world, especially in Africa, Mali, I forget, was it Central African Republic, something like that, or Democratic Republic of Congo, I'm forgetting which, but one of the other African countries. Thank you, Chad and Craig. They're also being used in Syria. And again, private army mercenaries, soldiers, paid guns, right? Sudan. Okay. Well, that's right. Sudan, they're helping the rebels or whatever it is, right? I think in Sudan. Thank you, Jay and Dora. So the Wagner guys had around 8,000 of their men in Belarus. Now, Belarus is, I can show you on the new Ava map. So the new Ava map, we've got a little hard to tell because it's all black, but you'll see. Ukraine's right here, okay? Belarus is the country right to the north. This is all Russia, by the way, which is also kind of helpful to understanding how big Russia is on the Ukrainian border, right? This is Belarus right north of Ukraine, so northwestern Ukraine, Belarus. Well, when the Wagner guys had their insurrection, they tried to overthrow Putin, basically. Part of the deal for ending the insurrection, remember, because Prigozhin did better than he thought he was going to do, and he hadn't quite thought it out and kind of didn't know what to do. So he negotiated with Putin, and Putin said, okay, I'll pardon all of you guys. We won't hold you accountable for anything, but you've got to, thank you, Vicky, for the rose, Obi-Wan as well. You need to send your men to Belarus in order to get them out of the way. Okay. So that was part of the deal. Well, about 8,000 of the Wagner mercenary guys went to Belarus, and we were kind of wondering, once Putin killed Prigozhin, what he was going to do with Wagner. Now, he was trying to get a lot of the Wagner guys to sign up with the regular Russian military. We find out today, the Ukrainians are saying that there's about maybe 500 of the 8,000 Wagner guys that were in Belarus. 500 of them are being sent back to Ukraine to fight. They're fighting around Bakhmut. Bakhmut, you will recall, is the town in eastern Ukraine, right around here. That's the town that the Russians took a couple months ago, 3 months ago, maybe in end of May, after the Wagner group, of all people. Basically, the Wagner group was fighting there for about 11 months. They finally were able to take the town. It's the only real success the Russians had in like a year. So it was a big deal for Russia. Thank you, Parta. Even though it wasn't a big deal. I mean, it's a town of 60,000 people. It was before the war. It just isn't strategically that significant, but the Russians spent 11 months trying to get it, whatever. The Wagner guys left Bakhmut after they won, end of May. They'd been, fighting for months. They needed a break, and this was right before the insurrection and all that stuff. So they leave Bakhmut. The regular Russian soldiers take over Bakhmut. And what happens? The Ukrainians are fighting back, of course, trying to get the town back. And the Russians immediately start losing their battles for Bakhmut. The Ukrainians have been doing better and better, getting closer and closer. They still haven't taken Bakhmut back, but every day the Ukrainians are doing better and better and better and better at taking back Bakhmut. And it's making the Russians look bad because it's the only victory they had in the last year. Thank you, Pam. So the Russians are now sending around 500 of the Wagner guys back to Bakhmut to fight. Now, there are varying reports as to whether this is temporary, whether this is a short-term gig for these guys, whether they're going to still be able to work afterwards. And mind you, this is only 500, right? Get 8,000 of these guys, the Wagner guys in Belarus. There's reports that some of them have been sent to Africa to do the fighting there. Some of them, I think, have disbanded. Some of them have joined the Russian military. The final point I'll make on this was two different Ukrainian officials kind of weighed in and kind of downplayed it, which I thought was interesting. They seemed to be suggesting that it wasn't that big a deal, what the Wagner guys were doing, which again, I thought that was kind of interesting, that they didn't think it was that big. I will say this, the one concern is that the Wagner guys are very good fighters. They're war criminals, they're murderers. Absolutely, but they're good at what they do, unlike a lot of the Russian troops overall. So it's always a concern to any degree that the Wagner guys are getting rehabilitated and possibly getting put back in to battle. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. So anyway, next story, F-16s. Kind of an update. I don't think it's a big update, but there was a story today that the Netherlands, which is one of the countries that's going to be providing F-16s to the Ukrainians, said that they will be providing F-16s next year. So, 2024. The training has to happen first, of course. The Dutch said that the training they're going to do is going to take 6 to 8 months. It is training that takes shorter than the normal training the Dutch give their own pilots. So, that's good. But they indicated that it's not really clear when they'll be sending the planes because A, you've got to do the training for the flying the planes, and then B, you've got to also do training for the mechanics, which should be happening at the same time, but they've got to train too. So, like I said, it's kind of an update, but I don't think it's much of an update because we knew the Dutch were going to be giving the planes. They simply reiterated, yes, we're giving planes. It won't happen until next year, but we knew it wasn't going to happen until next year anyway, because why would the Dutch be giving planes now when the Ukrainians can't use them for 6 to 8 months? It's stupid to have them just sit there, right? Final quick little update. Denmark has already launched its training for Ukrainian pilots. U.S. training should begin soon. And the Netherlands will eventually be doing their training at a training center that's being built, or maybe it's already been built, but it was being built in Romania. Reuters. Okay, so here's kind of a good story about Switzerland. I'm going to have a quick sip of tea. Interesting story about Switzerland, actually. So Switzerland, you may know. I'll even, for those who aren't from Europe, the Europeans know where it is, but for those who aren't from Europe, Switzerland is hiding. Oh, hello. Switzerland is hiding over here. So this little guy here is right north of Italy, right east of France, right southwest of Germany. That's Switzerland. Switzerland has traditionally been neutral in wars and things like that. Having said that, very friendly to the West, of course, very friendly to NATO because they are a European country. But part of their neutrality issue is they don't give weapons to warring parties. So the Swiss have said all along, they're not going to let their weapons go to Ukraine. Well, there had been requests from several of the European countries, just looking right here, Germany, Denmark, and Spain all had requested for Swiss-made weaponry to go to Ukraine, and the Swiss said no. There were then requests, and I remember at first the Swiss saying no, but apparently they've changed their mind or something. There were then requests. The Swiss had like 100 Leopard tanks that they're not using anymore. They've been mothballed. They're going to be decommissioned. And the Germans, I believe, had asked and said, can we have those tanks back? Because they're German tanks that you bought, we'll buy them back from you. And the Swiss said no, because they were afraid the Germans would give the tanks to the Ukrainians. Well, what finally got agreed is the Swiss are going to, let me see here. Germany had asked Switzerland in February to sell back some of the 96 Leopard 2 tanks. They're the Leopard 2s too, which are the good ones. The Leopard 2 tanks it has in storage. The Swiss parliament yesterday approved the decommissioning of 25 Leopard 2 tanks, paving the way for them to be resold to Germany. Now, what's interesting about this is the deal is that the Germans cannot give the weapons to Ukraine. Okay, they have to keep them for themselves, or they can sell them to another European country that's not at war, right? But they can't actually sell or give the tanks to Ukraine because Ukraine's at war. The thing is, I seem to remember months ago, the German request all along was not to get the tanks to give to Ukraine. It was to get the tanks to offset other tanks that would be given to Ukraine, right? If you, for example, if I've got, let's say I've got, I don't know, 200 Leopard 2 tanks. Let's just pretend I'm a European country. I've got 200 tanks. I would love to give Ukraine 100 tanks, but I can't afford to get rid of half of my tanks. I need them to defend my country as well. if I can get Switzerland to sell me their 100 Leopard 2 tanks, I can take the Swiss tanks for myself and I can sell or give my tanks to Ukraine. Now, the Swiss tanks would not be going to Ukraine, but tanks, like money, are fungible, meaning it kind of is the same thing, right? I mean, it's kind of the same thing. And initially, I remember the Swiss saying no, because the Swiss knew that by giving their tanks to the Germans or selling them, it would free the Germans up to give more tanks to Ukraine. Well, Switzerland apparently now is saying it's okay. Thank you, Ernie, for the TikTok gift and Lupo Italiano. So good news. It's a little weird. I don't quite get what's going on. I'm not going to complain. I think there's probably a little bit of a legal fiction going on for the Swiss, that they're able to say, no, our tanks aren't going there. But you know what? Good. Anyway, yeah, little Russian, somebody's getting their wings. Remember, I have to occasionally block people just for myself because it's a little bit of joy I get by doing it. So there we go. Someone got their wings. Congratulations, Angel. Anyway, so that's good, but that's a good piece of news for Ukraine. All right, let me do a quick membership pitch, and then we will go on with the rest of the news. So one of the ways I'm able to afford to do this, as I said, your guys' gifts, please do keep them coming, TikTok and YouTube. The gifts are actually very helpful for supporting my work. But another way I'm able to afford to do this is setting up memberships, which basically let you guys contribute monthly automatically to my work. Just make a monthly donation. Although, frankly, the gifts are great too. So please do keep the gifts coming. There's a number of ways of doing the monthly donations. You can do them on Discord by becoming TikTok. Thank you, Timothy. You could do it on TikTok by becoming a TikTok subscriber. I believe it's the star on the screen somewhere, maybe at the bottom. I don't quite recall. The mods can tell you. You can sign up for monthly there. You can do it on YouTube and become a YouTube subscriber. That's all the folks with the green names: Carlos, Laka, who do we got? Dark Irish, Greg, lots of other folks here. All of those folks are the ones that are the monthly subscribers on YouTube. You guys can do it. Thank you, Eva. You guys can do it with the little dollar sign by the comment box at the bottom. You can do it on Discord. You can do it on Ko-fi as well. Oh, and Twitch. So there's lots of different ways. You can find a number of those links in my bio on TikTok. Click the main link and you'll see it. On YouTube, aravosis.com will give you all those links, or Ko-fi, for example, is right at the bottom. But there's lots of ways to do it. I always say, look, if you can't afford it, don't worry. This is always going to be free. If you can afford it and you've been watching for a couple months and you like my work, consider supporting if you can. Even one-time donations helpful. It's very helpful. You can find that link at aravosis.com, or again, TikTok. You can find that link in my bio. Click the bio link. You'll see PayPal, Cash App, Venmo. It's helpful too, just because I do this full time. End of the pitch. I do this full time. And the only way I'm able to do this full time is because of your guys' support. Otherwise, I'd have to go get a real job again. And I'm happy to do, I've done a lot of real jobs in my life over the last 35 years of employment, but I much prefer to do this. So thank you for supporting me. All right, let's keep going, guys. So the Bulgarian parliament approved sending S-300 surface-to-air missiles to Ukraine. Kind of an interesting story. Thank you, Frank. Kind of an interesting story because the S-300s that the Bulgarians have, they're unable to, they need repairs, and the Bulgarians don't have the ability to repair them. My guess is, I don't know whether they were using the Russians or what, but they don't have the ability to do it anymore. And what they're going to do is, thank you, Joe, they're going to give some of their S-300s to the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians, what I read, do have the ability to repair the missiles. So A, they could use them as spare parts, but B, I'd read that they actually can repair them as well. So it's kind of a win-win all around. And then the Bulgarians would, of course, want to get more missiles, whether from NATO or whomever. But that's good news. Russia is starting to build a direct rail links to the occupied territories. Thank you, Nicola and Dion and Joe. They're sending Mariupol, Volnovka, wherever the hell that is, Volnovaka or Vacha, and Donetsk. In other words, sort of eastern Ukraine. What's interesting about this is basically the Russians are building rail links to like Mariupol down here, Donetsk up here. I don't know where Volnovodka is or Vocha, but the idea is that the Russians are able to send train links here to get supplies coming into the east. And the reason they're doing it is because if they can build these rail links, it takes pressure off of sending things across the Kerch Bridge, right? Thank you, And there was that Dion. Thank you, Dion. It takes pressure off of sending things across the Kerch Bridge. And we know the Ukrainians have been blowing up the Kerch Bridge. And I predict someday soon, the Ukrainians are going to literally destroy this bridge. We've been talking with before, whether it's 12 of the cruise missiles or whatever they use, they're going to obliterate that bridge at some point to try to stop the Russians from getting supplies into this area. And the Russians are now building the rail links so they can get around that. Now, as Brian says, rail links are easy to destroy, and that's true. Now, the good thing is, I mean, you could use missiles and things, but you also could use, or you could use drones, I suspect. You also could use sabotage as well. There's a lot of Ukrainians living in those occupied territories, obviously, and they can blow them up too. Nonetheless, the Russians are trying to get around it by doing the rail links. Germany's federal prosecutor's office has launched an investigation into the alleged shooting. Thank you, Stuart. Into the alleged shooting of civilians, including a German soldier by Russian troops at the beginning of the war. Some soccer news, or football for the rest of the world who aren't Americans. The European soccer body, UEFA, the Union of European Federation. I don't know what the hell it is. It's some soccer federation in Europe. But last year, they kicked the Russians out. So the Russians were not able to compete. And they just decided that they were going to let get this down a little bit. They were going to let sort of underage Russian teams compete, saying kids 17 and under can now compete on behalf of Russia. Interestingly, thank you, Doug, for that again. Interestingly, it's basically beginning to winnow away at the boycott, right? Thank you, Adam. Instead of saying no Russians can compete, now they're saying, well, let some Russians compete. And then next time they're going to probably say, well, the women can compete because the women can't really fight too much in the military anyway. This kind of crap, right? Well, fortunately, the Europeans have stood up and said, no freaking way. No freaking way. It's the Union of European Football Associations or something like that. That's it. Thank you, Stuart. Yep. And you've got a number, let me pull this here. You've got a number of countries that have stepped forward. First of all, Sweden itself, which is great. Sweden is hosting next year's competition. The Swedes came out and said, we're not letting the Russians compete. We host the competition. They're not coming into our country and they're not competing, which was great because that kills the deal right there. In addition, a growing number of countries have said they will not compete against the Russians. If they are thrown against the Russians, they're not playing, including Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, England, Northern Ireland, Denmark, Sweden, and Ukraine, of course, as well. So very interesting what's going on here. I think the Russians are toast. I think there's too many countries, especially the host countries, saying there's no way. How are these guys going to be able to play? The European soccer folks thought they were playing a cute little game here. And they could say, well, it's all about protecting the kids. Well, then why did you ban the kids to start with, right? And frankly, when you're talking about these kind of sports, especially in a country like Russia, there is no distinction between professional and private and everything else. It is first of all, they're doping these kids anyway, probably, right? I mean, for everything else these guys do. The Russians, everything is about national pride. Everything is about the culture being tied to the government and everything else because Russia's a dictatorship. And by these kids competing and these kids winning, it's part of making, Magna Russia look better. In any case, I'm glad it's being killed. The final story, very weird story. Potentially funny, not entirely funny. There's a part of it that's not funny, but weird, is 3 Russian propagandists. Two are, one's with a state-run news agency. Another's a photographer. One's a columnist with a state-run news agency. One's a photographer with a state-run news agency. And one is a, military expert on state-run TV. This is Russia. It's a dictatorship. They're all propagandists for Russia. They all support the war. Well, somebody sent all 3 of them to their homes a severed pig's head. It was in a black pouch left on their front porch. Kind of wild. Sounds very Russian. The one received a phone call where an unknown caller demanded he renounce his support for Russia's invasion of Ukraine and threatened to kill him. Obviously, the threatening to kill, I'm not going to condone that. But I will say, very interesting. I mean, this kind of stuff makes me wonder, because it makes me wonder whether, is it Ukrainians? Is it Russians? Right? Like, thank you, user 2119, like, who's actually doing it? Because it could be fellow Russians, which honestly, I mean, in a way, the best thing would be if it's fellow Russians. Ukrainians could do it, but I'd rather see some opposition rising within Russia, because these guys are going to be trouble for Putin. They're going to be trouble for the Russian government as time goes on. Anyway, just sort of an interesting, weird, very Russian kind of report there. That's it for the news. I will do questions in a second. Our auctions are ending today. Thank you, Frank Thomas. Most of the auctions are done. There's a couple left. We basically have, and thank you, Adventures, as well, for the Fey Wisp. We do auctions over on Discord. We got a great Discord community, discord.aravosis.com. And we talk about Ukraine, lots of other issues. Thank you, Canada's End. And one of the things we do over there is we have auctions of really cool stuff I get from Ukraine. And the auctions are twofold, really. Half of the proceeds from the auctions we channel back to Ukraine. I send Vlad every week between like $200 and $400, sometimes more, actually. Thank you, Bonnie, for 50% of the auction money that he then spends on all the different charities and things we're doing. Lately, we've been buying camouflage nets for the military. We've also done stuff for charities for kids and things like that. Thank you, Olga. The other 50% goes to support me and my work, because I do this full time as my job and I don't make money anywhere else. So it provides an income. I wanted to show you guys, the new auction items are not up yet, but because it's the end of the month, I always like to put the best stuff out at the end of the month. And I've got really freaking cool stuff for the end of this month. I will only show you a couple of them, but as I said, they're very cool. So a couple of them, we've got, actually, this I love. So this is the same woman who has been designing the other pieces we've got, this traditional Ukrainian design. And it's protected by UNESCO. It's a World Heritage design. And it's a bag, but check out this bag painted by hand, people, from a Ukrainian artist in a small village. I mean, this is insane. Look at this. I'm going to show you guys too. Painted by hand, this thing. Is that freaking wild? Yeah. I just love it on the white too. It's absolute, but it's a shoulder bag for shopping or whatever. But or you could frame it and put it on your wall. Really, I mean, I was looking at it against my wall, thinking you could frame this thing. But absolutely beautiful thing. We've got actually this. I got a chuckle of. I got this from Ukraine, and I get a chuckle out of it. It made me laugh. So it's a Ukrainian military belt. This is one of the formal belts with the white. Okay. You've got one of the Ukrainian designs on the buckle there, the trident, right? You can see. Now, but this gets interesting. What's interesting about this, first of all, the patina is fabulous. The color on the brass is really nice. The brass means it's probably one of the older belts, because I own some of these as well. Probably one of the older belts, could be from the 1980s or so. The patina is fabulous, which is nice. What is more fun about this belt is, notice how the design in the middle is very clean and the background has the patina, right? Almost like the design in the middle is new. The design in the middle is new. Look at the back. You see how there's soldering in the middle there, and there's a star. Check this out. There's actually a star on the other side and soldering. This is an old Russian military belt buckle, a Soviet military belt buckle that they took off the star from the center, the Russian star, and they put the Ukrainian trident on there instead. So this, I think, is totally cool, because basically it's the Ukrainians taking a Russian military belt and basically bastardizing it to make it Ukrainian, which I see, isn't it, to me, I thought this was really cool. So it's kind of fun. And as I said, it's a beautiful patina, but now you see what I mean in the back. You see the star. You can see the star and what they did, how you can't see the star on the front anymore. So it's kind of neat, isn't it? I thought it was really cool. And I love just the whole aspect of the Ukrainians kind of saying, we're going to change it for ourselves. So that's one of the things. I got two more also. I'm going to have like 10 or 11 things. These are for the auctions we're doing on our Discord. They're going to be set up next week. This is very nice. This is a gift sent to us by Nadia. Nadia runs Harkovu Mir, which is the charity, kind of Meals for Wheels or Meals on Wheels charity that we've been doing a lot of our fundraising for in Ukraine. They provide meals for people around the country, shut-ins, people because of the war, etc. They've also helped a lot of other charities. This she bought for us is a leather handbag, but it is painted with a tradition, the traditional Ukrainian design with the woman with the flowers and stuff. I just think this is totally cool. Written on the bottom, little thing there, Slava, whatever it means. Now, what is really cool about this? Two things. One, it contains a strap, so you can put it as just so you can see how big it is. It's a nice size. So you can put it as a shoulder bag because it's got a strap. And the other cool thing, I do feel sometimes like I'm doing an infomercial. The other cool thing, it comes with a money purse wallet on a piece of leather as well. So it basically doesn't get stolen. So when you're pulling your wallet out, it's still attached to your bag. I think this is just the coolest thing. Like I said, Nadia, who's got very good taste, bought it herself. Just show you really quick. But it's just you can see it's a really interesting leather too, because it's very shiny and has kind of a pattern on it. It's really pretty. Anyway, I just thought that was very pretty. Would it be a tote bag? I didn't know what you'd call it. Yeah. And the final thing, and this is the pièce de résistance. This piece, and the bidding is starting. I see Marion, my friend Marion is here today. The bidding on this piece is starting very high. I have a piece of something I got from the war in Ukraine. I had the option of cutting it into multiple pieces. I didn't want to because when I show you, you'll see what I mean. I didn't want to cut it up because it certainly is cooler as one piece. But if I sell it as one piece for the auction, I want to be able to get enough, right? Otherwise, I would cut it up. So I want to show you this, which was going up for auction tomorrow. This is a piece of a Shahed drone, the Russian kamikaze drones. It is a piece of the material. This is it. If you get close, you'll see the really cool honeycomb they've got, which they use as the inside structure. Show you guys. That's the honeycomb. Very strong, very light. It's crazy light. I mean, there's nothing to this. This is the back. Kind of cool because the back has got it's got like a little number on the back as well. I don't know for what. Kind of hard to show you guys here. This is the back, but this is the outside part of the drone. It is crazy light. It's the wildest thing. But as I said, I thought of cutting this into 3 pieces. And Marion's going to start the bidding. So I'm starting the bidding rather high. The bidding's going to probably start around $500 for this because it's a very nice piece. And it's the only one I've got. I've got a piece for myself that's actually smaller than this, but I think this is just absolutely wild. It is a piece of a Russian Shahed drone that they've been firing at Ukraine, obviously knocked out of the sky by the Ukrainians. And very cool souvenir from the war. So that will be one of the things we're auctioning off on the Discord. As I said, starting that at a larger price because I've decided. Thank you, Carla. I talked to Marion about it. She asked me, and she agreed. Thank you, Andre, that it was cooler to auction it off as one. Actually, everyone was lobbying me to auction it as one piece because it is really cool as one piece. So I was like, all right, thank you, Dora. So as I said, we're going to start the bid high so that we can actually pull in some real money on that. But it's very cool, very cool. And I've got a smaller piece for myself that's really kind of neat too. Anyway, there you go. That is it for the news today, guys. Let's do questions and answers. But anyway, those auction items are all starting tomorrow. I'm going to be setting them up throughout the day on Discord. I'm trying to think. There's nothing else really to show you. That's the cool stuff. I've got another cool thing, but I don't want to show you because it's a candle made out of I believe it's a rocket-propelled grenade shell from Bakhmut. And I bought 2 of these. One of them I already auctioned off. And the second one I've still got. It's a candle. I don't want to show you because I don't want to show a piece of a rocket-propelled grenade during a broadcast because I think that might just be a little too much for the TikTok censors. So we're not going there. But it's very cool. I've got it over on the Discord. You can check it out. Callum knows what it is. Yes. Is it 40 millimeter? I forget. Callum helped me sleuth what it was exactly. But it's a really neat sort of bottom of the, I say our rocket propelled grenade because it's the kind of grenade you shoot. And it's really cool. They put wax in it, made a candle. It's from Bakhmut, which is neat too. Anyway, like I said, I'm putting up the coolest stuff. Oh, Kanausi, you got the last one. Okay. Isn't it cool? It's a beautiful, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. Actually, you know what you could do too? You could also easily, once you use it, you could just put more wax in, melt the wax, put another wick, and you've got another candle, really. It's very, Kanausi had gotten the previous one. Yep. So that's the only one. I've only got one more, and that one I'm auctioning off this week too. So we got a lot of really cool stuff. All right. Let's talk about back to the new. I get excited when I talk about this stuff because I love all the cool stuff from Ukraine. I just think it's so interesting. But anyway, all right, let's talk, guys. What do we got? News, substance. Make sure. Okay, didn't miss any of you guys here. You're still talking about the grenade. Can we use sanctions and funding for Armenia, Cyprus, and the Kurds to get Turkey to let Sweden in NATO? Oh my God. That's a tough one. Well, Turkey may not be the problem. The problem now may be Hungary. The Turks already said, Erdogan said this past weekend that the Americans had agreed to provide F-16s to Turkey in exchange for Turkey letting NATO, letting Sweden join NATO, and the Turks agreed. So the big problem now appears to be Hungary. The Hungarians came out on Monday and said, we're in no rush to approve Sweden because they're being idiots too. So that's going to be the next big thing. And honestly, they need to come down. I mean, the Hungarians, again, the European Union and NATO do not want to lose members. It's not good to lose members, right? Look at the EU. They were really worried when the Brits left that, France or other countries might leave. And so you don't really want to start the precedent. Having said that, they really need to put the fear of God into the Hungarians and say, you know what? You want to have a far right government. You want to go back on democracy. You want to suck up to Russia. You want to act like you're part of the Soviet Union again, like you enjoyed that kind of stuff. You have a good time. Thank you, Wayne. I would have said, have a nice day, Hungary. You want to join the Soviet Union and recreate it with Russia? You go to Russia. We're going to stop doing our trade with you. We're going to stop. You're no longer part of the EU. You're no longer going to get European subsidies. You're no longer going to get to vote. You're no longer going to get the trade benefits you get. Your people can no longer live and work in the rest of Europe. And feel free to join the Russian Economic Union of Belarus and Libya or whatever the hell it is, right? If you think things are so great with them, feel free. And Hungarians, instead of going on vacation in Paris, they can go on vacation in Siberia and see how much they like it. So, the only thing, Katerina, I had read about that, about not being able to kick people out of the EU. The only thing is I was reading up on that, and legally it's a bit of a questionable thing, though, because I believe, and I think this was about I think this was about NATO maybe and not the EU. This was, I think, about NATO. There's no provision to kick somebody out of NATO, but they were arguing that just because there's not a provision that says you can't, doesn't mean you can't. In other words, if it's unspoken in the law, sometimes there's a gray area. I don't know about the EU, though, whether it's impossible. Is it legally impossible, or is there no provision that explains how you would do it, is my question, right? But damn, it would be nice if you could kick them out, or just to be able to remove them, No, I know they weren't a Soviet republic, but they were part of the Soviet bloc. Yeah. I think they want to become a Soviet republic, but correct. They were not a Soviet republic. They were part of the Soviet bloc. Anyway, just pisses me off. Do you think if Russia would have been allowed into NATO years ago, things would have been better? The problem is, thank you, Vicky. I don't know. If Russia had joined NATO, what would have stopped Russia from going crazy again? Right? First of all, I don't think there's any way to have trusted Russia. How the hell could we have trusted Russia joining NATO? You know what I mean? I don't think it would. I just don't think it could have happened. How do you do that? You couldn't share intelligence with them. The problem is Russia kind of needs a revolution. They almost had a revolution, but they really didn't. Gorbachev dismantled the Soviet Union. It's not like the people overthrew it. Thank you, Dawn. But it's too bad. Russia, Russia lost such an opportunity when the Soviet Union was, dismantled. They lost such an opportunity to come clean, to tie themselves with Europe, to develop their country, because it is kind of a backwards country. I mean, it's backwards, I think, culturally in many ways. It's backwards economically. It's poor in many ways as well. And they had a chance to become part of Europe, and they botched it. It's really sad. I mean, and the war is only making it worse in a way, because it's feeding on the Russians' worst instincts of, we are the best in the world, we don't need you, this kind of garbage. And it's like, oh God, people, it's just, yeah. Julius has a super chat question. Thank you, Julius. I read a story recently that Putin gave Shoigu, who's the defense minister, until, yes, sometime in October, it was early October actually, to stop the Ukrainian counteroffensive or else. That is true. Reportedly, Putin told the defense minister, you better stop the counteroffensive in the next week or two, I think, because it's already end of September, or else. What's stupid about that is those kind of things always make me laugh, because it's like, it got me thinking of my UN boss, the evil boss at the UN, who was a corrupt, horrible, bullying human being. She was heading up communications there. And it reminded me of something I think she said to me once. I had proposed something for something, and she goes, do you really think that's a good idea? And she was always passive-aggressive human being. And I finally kind of had it with her, and I looked at her and I said, I just suggested it. Like, what the F do you think? Right? I mean, but it's one of those stupid, nasty comments people make that on its face are just dumb, right? Do you think it's a good idea? I just proposed it. Of course I think it's a good idea, right? And this kind of got me thinking of the same thing, which is, Putin, the defense minister, never thought of trying to stop and beat the Russian counteroffensive. But now that Putin had said, you better stop it. Oh, well, okay, Vlad, I really hadn't thought, as the defense minister of Russia fighting the war in Ukraine, that maybe we should try to beat the Ukrainians, right? Thank you, Frank. But now that Putin said do it, so I mean, it's one of those stupid things. The only thing I can think of is, you give that kind of ultimatum, you give that kind of thing because you basically are telling the general, I don't care how many of our troops get killed, throw them in there and go crazy. We got to stop these guys and do something you wouldn't normally do, is what he's saying. Now, that doesn't mean nukes, because then we enter the war and they lose. But I think it means throw as many of your troops as possible. And if they die, they die. I don't care. That's what I think. But it is kind of a goofy thing to say, but I did see that. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure it's putting pressure on Shoigu. It also suggests that Putin's feeling a little pressure himself, which is good. Thank you, Bluey, for that. But good, exactly. If Putin's feeling the pressure, good for him. They've had PB&J is asking what happened to the sham elections that were held in the occupied territories. I don't know. They had like some elections like a week or two ago, and I don't know what. I mean, they were BS elections. I don't even think I reported on it for you guys, because it's just BS. Thank you, Scott, for the TikTok gift. But I don't know kind of what resulted. We didn't really hear much about it, which makes me almost. Didn't something go wrong with them that they had to stop? I thought something happened. Because also, wouldn't Russia have been talking about the 97% agree, this kind of BS? So I just don't know. I don't know. I don't even know what that means, Michael. Sorry, Michael's being a troll. I'm a veteran and you don't care if we die for people like you. I have no idea what that even means. I have no idea what that means. I think you're a troll, Michael, sadly. Shoigu, before entering any room, checks if there are any windows open. Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. The polls got blown up. That's what I thought. I thought something went bad there with the polling, and they kind of had to stop it. The elections. Russia was basically having their fake elections in the occupied territories. Russian veteran. Yeah, that's more like it. What else, guys? What else? What else were we talking about? What was the at the beginning of the show, something with it was the Taurus cruise missiles. Yeah, I was saying I talked to Callum about that, and saying it just sounds kind of BS that they would need the Germans to help run the cruise missiles, right? That just sounds kind of ridiculous. See what else here? The F-16s, the Swiss thing is interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's got to be BS on the German cruise missile thing. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Oops, moving my mic around. What else we got? Oh, that's interesting. Doug says Article 7 can suspend Hungary from EU benefits, but what's the actual? Thank you, Chief. What's the trigger for that? What does Hungary have to do that? Julius, thank you, Julius. That was really generous of you. Do you or your friend Vlad have access to get a Ukrainian military beret? I'm kind of a collector. I can ask Vlad. The problem is it's kind of risky for Vlad to send military stuff out of the country. You know what's funny? It's funny you say that because I had tried to get one and the guy kind of screwed me and just whatever. So I never got it, but I was going to get a Ukrainian military beret that was really cool and it didn't go through. The problem is it's hard. I can ask Vlad. It's hard for him to get stuff like that, as I said, because the Ukrainians are a little weird about shipping military stuff out of the country. So, he's got to be careful, but let me look into it again. Because like I said, I found you don't see a lot of them. You don't see a ton of them, but I did find a neat one. Anyway, let me look. I wrote that down as a note for myself. I don't know. Charles said, anybody else hear about this? Charles says, is it true that a Russian passenger plane was not allowed to land in Bulgaria? First of all, I'm not sure what a Russian passenger plane would be doing in Bulgaria. They're not supposed to go there anyway, unless it's a plane bringing or picking up diplomatic personnel. So I didn't see the story though. No. Russia tried to join NATO. There was something in the early 1990s, but I don't remember the details of it. But it was, I don't think Russia tried to join NATO. There was this kind of general discussion. It came up as an idea, but I don't think Russia actually tried. I'd have to double check. Hey, Marichka, Slava Ukraini, Heroam Slava. They suggested it and were shut down. That's my thinking. Yeah. And honestly, again, I don't know how it would work. You can't integrate Russia until we trust them. How do we trust the Russians, right? I mean, when you think about it, the European countries actually, that's a problem for Ukraine as well. This hasn't really been discussed in terms of NATO, but we know there are problems with Russia having really penetrated Ukraine's security services, intelligence services, things like that a lot of the folks are basically double agents or whatever. And if you join NATO, that's an issue. I mean, you don't want a situation where, a lot of the information and stuff you're giving them goes to the Russians, but it can cause issues for collaboration. It's not the best thing. But with the Russians, I mean, every Russian's a potential spy. I just am not convinced it would have ever worked. And what would have happened? They would have gone crazy like they did anyway. They would have picked Putin. And Putin would have done the same stuff he's doing. We would have had to kick him out of NATO anyway. I mean, yeah, no, it's, well, it did work for Germany. That's true. No, that is true. Matisse. Yeah, very true. But you know what? Let me put it this way. Russia has nobody to blame for its problems than itself, right? Russia's economy, Russia's culture. Thank you, Chazak. Russia's belligerency, their imperialism, their love of the Soviet Union and Stalin and all this BS. I mean, everything they do is venerating the Soviet Union, which was a horrific country, and oppressed so many millions in Eastern Europe, including their own people, killed tens of millions of their own citizens. The Russians did. Horrific country. And the fact that the Russian people look back at that fondly, they're not ready to join NATO. They're not ready to join Europe. I think, unfortunately, there's something very still screwed up there that they've got to figure out. They're not ready for it. They're just not ready for it. I think it is the Russians. I think it's the Russians themselves. At this point, how many hundreds of years, I don't know if this is what you mean, Romanu, but how many hundreds of years have the Russians had really shitty governments? At some point, it's the people. I mean, Eastern Europe was not your fault. Those of you in Eastern Europe, that was the Soviets' fault, and it was the collaborators' fault. Okay. But the Russians have had bad governments going back forever. There's something they've got to mature here. They've got to have their own revolution, I think. Callum says, I think they have a culture of being oppressed and accepting it. I think that's true too. Yeah. Yeah. Their education system's an issue, Velika. The only thing is with the internet, you get a lot of information now. Good luck. It's sort of like people in our country, people who don't believe the news and stuff. You've got the internet. You can get the truth. But if you choose to read crazy people and you choose to listen to crazy people, yeah, you're going to believe the crazy history. I really don't. I don't see. Russia is not Eastern Europe. It's not a bunch of people who were literally oppressed, who would love to be free, but who were oppressed by a government that basically hated them. Russia, it's a government they approve of. They need to have a cultural revolution, a revolution inside their own heads. World War II was a fake. That's funny. We all think very different than Westerners in Romania. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think as you go further east, there may be a little bit of a change. Every country is different anyway. I was going to say my family's from Greece. Greece is a little different too. It's every country. The French are certainly not like the British. They think differently than the Brits. So I guess to some degree too, you get into sort of an interesting question of what does it even mean to think like a Westerner to some degree. I would say thinking like a Westerner being some of the values we have in common, democracy, some of those kind of values, right? That when you go further east, Russia, but I'm saying but comparing the British and the French, very different cultures, very different. The Americans and the French, the way the French think about things versus the Americans, very different. They're just different people, but we're all part of Western culture. Yeah. What else? So I was looking here. What else, guys? Is Ukraine misappropriating U.S. funds? Not that we know of. No. There's been really no evidence of that. Nope. Didn't U.S. Alaska in the northwestern U.S. belonged to Russia, and we bought it from them. I don't even remember when we bought Alaska. When did we buy Alaska? That was Seward's Folly, but when was it? Was it like the late 1800s or something? Alexa, when did the U.S. buy Alaska from Russia?
Alaska was the 49th state admitted to the Union on January 3rd, 1959.
Yeah, Alexa's stupid. I thought it was the 1860s. Actually, Chaz knows because he's in Alaska. Charles does. 1867. I was going to say 1860s. I was thinking 1860s and thought that's got to be too early. Yeah. So we bought Alaska from Russia in 1860. And at the time, I don't know the history very much anymore, but it was called Seward's Folly because it was just like crazy that he bought this in the middle of nowhere territory, Thank you, Mark Star. And now, of course, we're very happy to have Alaska. Very cool state. I've been there a number of times. Really neat place. Daniel, how are you? Daniel says, if Russia nukes Kryvyi Rih, which is Zelensky's hometown, exactly, as a random example, would the West really go to conventional war? Why are you so sure? I'm not sure they'd go to conventional war, but I hope so. But I think the West would collectively crap itself. UK and Poland decide. I think all of that's correct. What I've said is a couple things with this. NATO would have to do something big if the Russian uses nuclear weapons. Mostly because we cannot let the Russians set a precedent that any country can use nuclear weapons and get away with it in today, nowadays, right? Because if Russia does it, that sends a message to Iran, to India, to Pakistan, to North Korea. Well, if you use the small nukes, it's okay, right? If you use a small nuke in South Korea, by the way, what message would it send? Well, hey, the Russians did it. They got away with it. Maybe we could use a small nuke in South Korea, we the North Koreans, and we'd get away with it too. That's way too dangerous of a precedent. The problem is that, as you just said, Daniel, I do worry that NATO would collectively crap itself, to quote Daniel's Irish. They would freak out. Biden would go, I know they used a nuke. It's really bad. But what, do we really want to get into this with Russia? It's too dangerous, right? All of that crap would kick in. right? All of that crap would kick in. So what do you do? What do you do, right? I am not convinced we'd go to conventional war. I do think we would have to do something drastic. Our generals, our former generals, keep saying we should bomb the hell out of them. I don't think we're going to do that. I do think something such as a no-fly zone. You know, I don't think we would sink the Black Sea Fleet, though, Rob. I think maybe we should, but I don't think we would. I think we would still try to do something that's defensive, offensive. So in other words, instead of blowing up, for example, the no-fly zone that we keep not wanting to do. No-fly zone basically is a no-fly zone basically is, at Ukraine's request, I will get rid of this, Daniel, so folks can see. Thank you again for that. A no-fly zone would be, at Ukraine's request, we would say, okay, all of Ukraine, well, hell, it could even be all of Ukraine, including the opposite, either all of Ukraine, including the occupied territories, or all of Ukraine just shy of the occupied territories. I don't know what, right? We'd say one or the other. The US and NATO are now protecting all of this area. Any plane, anything in the air that takes off over the territory we are protecting will be blown up. Any missile guidance system, any radar that gets turned on in this area will get blown up. Any plane that takes off will get blown up. And here's the deal, Russia. If you do not take off any planes in that area, that was kind of a weird construction, but you get it. If you do not turn on your radar in that area, it will not get blown up. So it's a cute way for NATO to say, we're not going to blow up any Russians. We're not going to blow up any Russian planes. We're now saying, if you do this, we will, and it'll be your fault. I really do. I think that's the kind of thing NATO might be able to pull off. I worry as you do, Daniel. And the thing is, adjusting my lights here, my concern here is big part of the reason I am so critical of Biden is at the beginning of the war, but also recently he did it again. When Biden was talking about providing MiGs to Ukraine, MiG fighter jets from Poland, and he started whining about World War III. You can find the quotes from Biden. World War III, Russia's a nuclear power. If we get involved, if we go to war with Russia, it's going to be a nuclear war. We're all going to die. This kind of crap. Biden made clear that, and he said, we can't go to war with a nuclear power. Well, if we can't go to war with a nuclear power today, we can't go to war with a nuclear power tomorrow, right? If last year Biden said any kind of possible conflict with Russia will lead to nuclear war, then the same thing applies if Russia uses a nuke on a Ukrainian city, right? I mean, if you're convinced that anything we do beyond what we're doing will lead Russia to nuke us, then we're not going to do it, even if they nuke Ukraine. So my concern with Biden's comments are, I think it sends an equivocal message to Ukraine. I think it sends a confusing message, not to Ukraine, to Russia about Ukraine, that the Russians think, like, if I were advising the Russians, thank you, Super Hornet, I tell them the same thing Daniel's saying. I'm not really sure Biden would do anything other than more sanctions if you nuked Ukraine. And that's why the Russians might just do it. The only problem is there's also not anything really advantageous to do it. The military experts all say it doesn't help. There's nothing strategically. It doesn't help the Russians win the war, dropping a nuke on Ukraine. So why would they do it? And it would turn India against them. It would turn China against them. It'd turn a lot of the countries. South Africa might turn against them. A lot of the countries that support Russia or, are Russia adjacent friendly or whatever. But I do think it's dangerous. I think it's very dangerous, the position we're in on this, because I will say this: we must have told Russia privately. I think even though we've made comments publicly and said it would be catastrophic, privately we must have told them it'll be an act of war if you do this. Because the big problem for NATO is Poland. Poland's on the border there, as is. We'll show you Ava's map again. Not just Poland. You've got Ukraine. A nuke goes off here, and you've got Romania nearby, NATO. Hungary, NATO. Slovakia, NATO. Poland, NATO. Turkey down here. Turkey's a little farther, but not that far. But you've got 4 NATO countries right here bordering Ukraine. Those NATO countries are going to freak out if a nuclear bomb goes off next to them, right? I think I mentioned, I didn't say Bulgaria. Bulgaria doesn't border you. Bulgaria is close. It doesn't border Ukraine though, but it's close. Yeah. but I think they're going to freak out. I think if I were the Poles and a nuke goes off next door, I would have to get involved in some way. I would say, that's it. That's it. This is too dangerous now. This is just too dangerous, you know? So anyway, so I don't disagree with you, Daniel, but I think we would have to, that one is not a t-shirt. That is what did you guys call it? A tote bag that Ava Wallenberg made for me. She did the design herself and then printed it on a tote and sent it to me from Sweden, which was very sweet of her. And it's a nice little map. It's cool. Yeah. Well, it's a map, but it's a tote map. It is a bag. It's got handles. It's got handles on the back that I've got taped to some, because it is a bag. But it's continuing the tradition of having maps made from something else. So kind of fun. Kind of fun. Right. And the winds could bring it to other things. You know, exactly. It's important that it's a map so you can drink. Exactly. I know you do need an emoji for Ava's map. I'm not sure. I have to see if I can find something. I'm not sure what it would be. I'm not sure. Interesting. Anyway, a sunflower. Well, the sunflower is Ukraine overall. Yeah. Anyway, guys, anything else? What do you think? What do you think? Beep, 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 beep. Oops. Anything, guys? You know, we could do Discord for a little bit. Yeah. I mean, because the timing is still good. I don't like doing Discord when it gets too late here, but it's only 10 after. We can go to Discord. Could Poland do anything good against Russia? I mean, Poland's got a good military. That is Baleen. Baleen's doing well. My Alaskan Baleen is good. It's happy. I told you it was fun bringing that back from Alaska, totally wrapped up in cardboard or whatever, and going through the airplane, and Alaska totally good with it. Chicago not as happy because Chicago hadn't seen it. They were like, "What is this?" Whereas Alaska, they're like, "Oh yeah, it's Baleen." So Poland got 500 HIMARS. NATO only gives 22 to Ukraine. Now the only thing is I don't know when Poland is getting them. I do agree Ukraine should have gotten more HIMARS. Ukraine needs more Patriot missile systems as well. Look, Tudo or Tycho, I agree with you on all of this. I from the beginning, we have been going slow with Ukraine on the weapons, and it's part of this NATO fear thing that I think is really obnoxious. Sasha is doing well. She's asleep. Oh, she's there. It's funny you said this because she's just getting up from her bed there. Oh, you just missed her. I was trying to show you guys. Oh, you just lost her. She just got out of her bed. Just as you said that, she was waking up from her bed. She's still kind of sitting there. What you doing? She's kind of sitting there panting. Her hair is in the air. She's getting a haircut on Friday. So my dog's got like explosive. We both have explosive hair, but she's got explosive blonde hair going at the moment. Does dragging the war out help erode Russia's capabilities? Yes and no. It depends, Paolo. I mean, let's put aside the fact that, okay, for both countries, they're losing men and women. Ukraine women, because 20% of the Ukraine military is women, Russia not so much. They lose people to death. They lose people to injury. They also just kind of lose people because you get really tired and burned out and everything else, right? So that becomes an issue as time goes on. Russia has more people they can call up than the Ukrainians do because they're 3 times as big, but whatever. You start running low on equipment. We know this from artillery shells, right? The Ukrainians have been worried about artillery shells. The Russians are worried about artillery shells. Tanks. Eventually your tanks get blown up. You need more, right? All those kind of things. Your planes get shot out of the sky. The Russians have more than the Ukrainians. So, I mean, all of that becomes an issue as time goes on. Now, there's another concern as the war goes on, which is your capabilities also can grow. Russia is building its own drone factories. Russia has already been making some of its own drones. Coming the beginning of the year, some of the Shahed drones, the Iranian drones the Russians are using, the kamikaze drones, the ones that blow up, the Russians are making their own. So because the war has dragged out, we've now enabled the Russians, in a sense, to build their own drone factory, which is really bad for Ukraine, right? Yeah, Callum's saying war breeds innovation. It does. But on the same token, the Ukrainians, they've developed their own cruise missile, the Neptune, right? They've developed a number of their boat drones that they've developed, and they're now developing a submarine drone, their Marichka, that we talked about yesterday. A drone that goes underwater, that's going to be very good. It can go 600 miles or 1,000 kilometers. They've developed also some of their flying drones. They've got a flying drone that I think goes like the same distance or something, 600 miles, 1,000 kilometers, something like that. So you are getting some of that innovation as time goes on as well. Thank you, Joe, for the hat. But for both, there is a risk for both parties in the war getting dragged out. Yes. But I think what's important is Russia has a risk as well, and people usually focus on just Ukraine. And there's a risk for both countries in a way. Also, to some degree, too, if you're Russia, the longer the war goes on, the more time you have to dig in. So you can dig more defenses, right? It makes it, you get more time to at least protect the land you've got. And because Russia controls 17% of Ukraine, oops, is she back there? All right, she sounds like she was playing again. My dog. Sorry, seeing here. All right. All right, guys. I'm gonna do the quick summary, and then we can go to Discord for a few minutes. Let's do that. All right. And Discord's discord.aravosis.com. We go and we hang out in the top left section. That's John's after party for about 15, 20 minutes, maybe. It is day 580. Thank you, Joe. Day 580 of Putin's 3-day special military operation. Wall Street Journal just reporting that Germany is holding off on sending Taurus cruise missiles to Ukraine. Ukrainian military says that of the roughly 8,000 Wagner mercenary troops in Belarus, a number of them have gone to Africa, and around 500 are returning to Ukraine's eastern front to fight in Bakhmut. On the F-16 front, the Dutch said that the delivery of the promised F-16 fighter jets from the Netherlands should come to Ukraine sometime next year. Reuters is reporting that Germany has welcomed a decision by Switzerland that will open the way to sell back some of its German-made Leopard 2 tanks. Basically, Switzerland has a bunch of German-made tanks. The Germans are not going to be able to buy them back. Even though the Germans can't give them to Ukraine as part of the deal, it frees the Germans up to potentially be able to give some more of their own tanks, or the Germans give these tanks to some other country, which makes the other country able to give up some of its own tanks to Ukraine. So anyway, it helps Ukraine. Reuters, that was the Reuters story. Bulgarian parliament has approved sending Ukraine S-300 surface-to-air missiles. Russia has started building railway links to occupied territories in eastern Ukraine in order to basically decrease the what's the word I'm looking for? Reliance on the Kerch Bridge to get supplies to the Russian troops in the east. The German Federal Prosecutor's Office has launched an investigation into the alleged shooting of civilians, including a German civilian, by Russian troops at the beginning of the war. The European Football Association has allowed Russian under 17 teams of Russians under the age of 17 to compete in the European-wide soccer competitions, and a number of European countries said no way, including Sweden, that is hosting the competition. So it looks like the Russians will not be competing after all. And finally, 3 Russian propagandists were surprised with a gift of a severed pig's head left in front of their homes by people who don't want them to renounce the war in Ukraine. So that is it for the news today, guys. Thank you, Rainbow. Do go over and check out the Discord. We're going to go now and hang out for about 15, 20 minutes. As I said, it'll be the part that's called John's After Party. And otherwise, join us tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., and we'll see you guys then. Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, always around. And look for us then. All right? All right, guys. Have a good night. Join me on Discord. Otherwise, see you tomorrow. Sokolov, he's alive, sadly. Nothing else to report. He's alive. I mean, it's pretty clear the guy's alive at this point. I mean, the Russians could be lying, but it's a hell of a lie if they're still pulling it off. All right. See you guys on YouTube, etc.